Let's talk about EA.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
No, I don't mean this company. I mean early access, particularly early access games. I will go with the bold claim in the beginning that early access destroyed gaming for me. And I will talk about it a little bit and tell you why I think it is specifically for me, but also give you some positives and negatives about early access games, and you can make up your mind on your own. I will go over the purpose of early access or the goals, and even give you some examples or alternatives, plus my own experience, of course. And you won't believe how many games that we know and like and enjoy are very popular were in early access. For example, some people know that Star Citizen, Ark, Baldur's Gate 3, DayZ is a very popular one, Dead Cells or Hades as well, Fortnite, for example, and Valheim. Those are big names, and I think that people usually, or gamers, know about those games, heard about those games, and they're very popular. So you can see it's not only the little indie developer that needs funding, but there are also good titles, famous and well-known titles, where the developer decided to use the early access jump pad to get more famous or get their game to the community.
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
The idea of early access games started in March the 20th, 2013, and it was kind of like the idea of Steam to give producers or give developers the possibility of creating their games, putting them on the platform so people can play them and try them out, and maybe even support the developers. So when you talk about the purpose or the goals of an early access campaign, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is funding, right? Funding means the developers have the opportunity when they are a little bit struggling financially or need a little bit more funds, they can get it through an early access. So they are developing the game, and after that, they kind of maybe struggle. So they put the game, you can buy it, you can try it out, but they get the money and can invest more into the game. Another purpose, you could say, is to eliminate bugs and get like feedback and more ideas, more input from the community, from the people that are interested in your game, so you can envision their vision of the game, plus you can find bugs more easily and try to fix them. Another point is you build a community, and what that brings is you can check if this game has a future, if people are interested in your idea, in your presentation of the idea. So developers can use that as another tool to see if the game is going to be popular and well received. And maybe to wrap it up, it's also a little bit for the developer to bring their vision to life. So recently you have a lot of games that are booming, like Pal World or Enshrouded, Helldivers, that do it a little bit different but still received very well, better than AAA titles. And that is also a way to develop a game that is maybe not there on the market yet, and you can maybe find a little niche that people would enjoy. Coming now to the positives, the big thing for sure, we gamers, or usually gamers, don't have that much wiggle room with the finances, and I guess they're maybe even younger. There are a lot of games, so usually an early access game is way cheaper than the full price game before. So you get a game that is maybe working, maybe good, and even cheaper. That's a great thing. For a good example is Last Epoch. I bought it myself, and for a pretty good title, you only paid almost half the price of some bigger games. Of course, you can also get some games for free that are pretty much enjoyable and on the same state, PoE for example, in this regard. But in general, cheaper, of course, we take it, right? Then another point is you get a little bit of a sense of ownership, or you're kind of like connected to the game. So as a buyer, as a player, you feel this game is what you develop with developers, you help them. It's a good feeling, I guess. I can tell you later about my own experiences, and I can tell that is a good thing. It's a small thing, of course, because not everyone is interested in it. But I guess some people are really happy that they can say, hey, I supported this game from the start and look what happened with the game, and the game is really great. That's something you connect with it and you feel even more inclined to play it. With this, you can also say, finally, as a gamer, and of course as a gamer that is maybe playing for long years, right? Like myself, I'm right now like playing over 30 years some video games. You mostly seen it all, played it all, maybe even hated it all. So sometimes it's really cool when you find a game that is envisioning your understanding of a game, or what you want to see in a game. That's a cool idea to have a indie developer that has ideas like you have, and you of course are lacking in developer games. So it is a great feeling to have a game that you envisioned. You can get it. The last point that I have is pretty much important, but is sometimes not noticed enough. When you know a game is early access, this game has a tag to it, right? The early access tag, which means you know exactly what to expect from this game. You can't go to the developer and say, look, I thought this RPG game would have 15 classes and 30,000 skills. I am now a little bit disappointed because I wanted to play it, right? So you know what you get. You get an unfinished game that will develop, hopefully, and you can be part of it. That's a great thing. I guess sometimes we have the problem that in recent time, games get published and they're not finished, right? So here you know that this game is functioning, or you can even find out that those games are maybe a little bit scammy through reviews, right? Yeah, that's a good thing. And when you look at it, you have sometimes games that come out already, in quotation marks, finished already. They are really scammy. They're not working because people just want to get your money. With the early access tag, it's maybe sometimes there is like hope, or there is a guarantee that hopefully the developers are going to work on it, right? You still have a chance. So those are my positive things about early access. Do you agree, disagree? You can tell me. I'm really open to hear your opinion. And yeah, let's go to the next point. When you talk about early access or everything in life, you usually see the positive sides and the negative sides. And that's the same for early access. First of all, some negative sides of early access is that the game can get a lot of negative reviews, or the opinion of the game can be a little bit not that well received, and in the end that can hinder people to purchase it or to even try it out before making their own mind about it. That's a really big risk for the developer, even though they're kind of like need the money and need the input. But when people are complaining about the game, it's pretty hard to build a community or grow the community. The other side of it is you can sometimes have fake reviews that can, in the end, disappoint the people that are buying the game. Of course, there's this really great possibility of refunding the game if the game is really bad, but you're not always experience the game after 2 hours and can refund it in Steam. So And the next one is, of course, you don't get any guarantees whatsoever, which means you buy the game, you have the game that you received in a maybe not finished state, in an almost even unplayable state, and now you never know if the developer puts in the work that you think you deserve and your vision will be there, and also if they do it at all. Maybe they just take the money, put some, I don't know, bug fixes once a year, and then they say, yeah, this game is fully functional. No worries about that, and we're still working on it. We still do that. So that's a really big risk, I guess, that players have to know before getting engaged into early access. And that leads me also to sometimes some games and some developers put out games that are just too early for early access, which means they're not in a good or playable state. They're horrible, they're bad optimized, and people really burn themselves on that game. And in general, not only on that game, but on the early access topic in general. So yeah, you kind of dig your own hole or grave when you not perform or don't give people what they think they deserve or should get. Another maybe minor point that you wouldn't consider but is somehow a negative thing, you usually with a early access title, you usually get like 2 soft launches of the game instead of a big launch where people buying it and the hype is huge and people want to get the game and your earnings grow. And sometimes 2 soft launches can go like, or the release can go unnoticed. So people don't even know that your game exists and there is not much hype, or you have to spend even more money on advertise for the game. What is probably for a little indie studio not the best way to handle finances in general. So those are my negative points, but to be honest, maybe there are more, and just tell them. Let's go to the next point, which is alternatives, right? Because when I was younger, yeah, you never had the opportunity of an early access game. And maybe back then it would have been not possible. Maybe the technology was not really suitable for that. But I remember we also got games that were, let's say, not finished or maybe needed a little bit of polish. And you had the opportunity to find that out and test it. So the first one is, of course, crowdfunding, right? You can go on Kickstarter or something. And to be honest, I did that recently. I backed up or crowdfunded a little bit of the game Zero Space, an RTS game that is like StarCraft. I am quite convinced that my engagement in the buying of the game is going to bear fruit. So I can now play the alpha version of the game. The communication is great, and I think, I'm not sure, that I'm pretty much safe when it comes to maybe get the money back. But I'm not sure, right? But it looks more professional, the crowdfunding situation, right? Because it is your decision. You can expect to get your product somehow. And even with a little bit of bonus when you do crowdfunding, right? Because sometimes you get some bonus material. You maybe can, like in this case, I think when you back up a lot, you can create some heroes there or give names to something. That's kind of like bigger than in the early access, for example, at Steam. So more engagement, more bug fixes, a higher chance that the game gets published and developed like you want to. Crowdfunding seems like the better early access, I would almost say. Back in my days, right, when I was a young pup, there were only, I would say, magazines, gaming magazines, where you can get demos, right? So another alternative for that is a free demo. So people can try it out, see how it works, and then even decide if they maybe want to go into early access, right? Or yeah, you kind of not burden the people with the expectation of the game because they only tried a demo. Everything can happen after that. They can't complain because they didn't buy anything. Of course, you are missing out on the money, but I think you shouldn't start developing a game without a good financial plan. So yeah, demos are a way to bring your game to the players, to the gamers, and get your feedback afterwards. Connected with it, there's also, back in my time, of course, again, yeah, I'm that old that I'm looking back. You can have open betas, right? That's the best way for developers, and they used to do it back then. There was a site where you can, I think, register to all games that had an open beta. And the great thing is, open betas and even demos are the best advertisement you can give for your game. You then have probably the people are more into buying the game. So I would say those alternatives are kind of, from the gamer's perspective, the more safe ones. Of course, from the developer's side, it is, I would say, mostly about the money. And with those alternatives, only the crowdfunding one gives you the money. You can develop the game furthermore. And as a little side note here, I would probably say that sometimes to counter this early access scam situation, Steam should limit the time how long a early access game can be in early access. So you force the developers to do something with the game, and you have a timeline, for example, for the gamers, that they know, okay, this has to come then. This is releasing on that timeline. Stuff like that is really, really, I guess, it's an alternative for early access, so everyone knows what to expect. It maybe is a way to give early access games a better reputation in general. What do you think? Are those alternatives kind of doable? Are those maybe old school thinking and the industry developed into a different way and it is not suitable anymore for our time? Let me know. And moving on to the last part, the one that is probably the most interesting or boring, depending how you see it. It is my own experience with early access and what I think about it and how it affected my gaming in general. So this is now the rambly part where I just talk about my experiences. I hope it's not too bad, but even though you can give me a little bit of advice how to do it better, my experience, to put it simply, with early access is negative. I really don't like the concept, unless, of course, I am happy when a game is cheaper, that's for sure. But what I don't enjoy about it is the unfinished state of a game. So there are some examples where you have a game that is just not polished, the graphics look bad, there is no story, there is no mechanic really that you can enjoy. That's of course something really that I wouldn't enjoy. I have to say, I never got an early access game where I was disappointed about those points I mentioned right now. So usually the games I tried out were kind of polished and had mechanics in it that you can play and try out. But I hate the fact when I play a game and I like the game. Just imagine you play Elden Ring and you just play the first area of the game and the game is amazing and you love it. And you want to play more, but you finished everything in this state. It is so frustrating because you want to play more, but you can't. You already found everything, little details, every mechanic you could try out, and you know everything about the game. And now you have to wait. And you have to wait for the next update. And unfortunately, usually those updates are not huge. So what happens is you forget about the game. You don't touch it anymore. For me personally, that happened a lot. For example, I got Sengoku Dynasty. It's like a survival building game that takes place in a kind of imaginary Japan, but everything is pretty much realistic. I enjoyed the game really a lot. But after a while, the game was getting boring because I knew how to build things, I knew how to develop things, and there were just minor steps of experience to gain or to experience something new in the game. So I kind of got bored. And that happens a lot. To be honest, the developers do a good job to provide the vision that they have and update those points that they want to put into the game. But to be honest, I didn't play it. It got released in August and I played it maybe a month and then stopped and never played it again. So that is really disappointing, and I hate the fact about that because I forgot about the game and I'm not engaged anymore because there's such a long time between those times that I played, and that is a huge turnoff for me. With that in mind, there is also the thing that you can pair with it is when you really enjoy a game and you tried everything out, every character, every skill that there is, and there is not much to do anymore. And you also know that you won't get a different experience when the game comes out as a full release. I recently, that's maybe not a good example, not the right example, but I played like a demo version of something, of a roguelike dungeon crawler. And I know exactly, I could already play all the classes that there were. I could play all the skills. I saw everything. Now I know I don't need to play it anymore. It is maybe interesting, but I know the play style. It didn't tickle my pickle that much that I want to buy it. And I guess this is something that developers also have to keep in mind. And of course, you could say that, yeah, that's the reason. That's a demo, right? I explained that before. In early access games, that happens a lot. So you play everything, you get stuck to a point where you saw everything, and then it gets boring. It takes time to get a little bit of an update. Then you play it again because maybe you still enjoy it. And then the next point happens. And that is, I don't know, I'm more likely willing to wait for a game until it is finished and released instead of getting just like little chunks of something that I enjoy and getting frustrated because I can't enjoy the full experience at once. Another point and experience from my side, it's maybe just anecdotal, but a lot of games, a lot of early access games, they never get released. They're still in the early access phase for like 6, 7, 8 years. But, and that's the great thing, I recently purchased Last Epoch, and I have to say the game was from the beginning. I think I played an early alpha demo. The development and the direction took a big swing or change, and that's a positive example of a game that was developed. They put in all the work, all the trust in the community, and the community also put all their trust and fundings into the game, and they got a positive result. So my last example that is more negative, and you can put it into the crowdfunding / early access, that was Crownfall. Pretty hyped about the game because I was looking for a MMORPG that still looked a little bit like World of Warcraft, but had a lot of races, a lot of classes. I always enjoy that the most about RPGs and MMORPGs. But in this case, maybe as you know, the game got cancelled. It was fairly far into the development and I played it a little bit. I was disappointed because that was one of my first early access games and I didn't know what to expect, and I wasn't enjoying the art, or not the art style. The art style was good, but the graphics in general, I couldn't find myself really in the game. It was, of course, a little bit dead. There were not many people. It was very raw. There was no goal in the game, really. Then I understand that the game got cancelled. And yeah, sure, my money is gone. I lost like 30 euros. And that's, of course, 50% goes on me because I chose poorly. But the game looked polished at that time, kind of, right? When I looked a little bit into it. Yeah, that's kind of my point of view, my experiences. They're mostly negative. And that's why, for me, early access does not work. But what is your experience with early access games? Do you see yourself in those sites or points that I mentioned, or did I maybe forgot something or stated something really wrong? I know I couldn't put in every thought that I have into words because my mother language is not English, and I guess some points, even though you point them out, I will probably say I stated them wrong or meant it different. But what do you think? Is it like harsh to say, but early access kind of ruined gaming in general or for you? Or are you a proponent? You see the positive sides of the early access idea. Yeah, let me know. Let's talk about it. Maybe you have positive experiences and can give me like a hint which games are good or not, and I could look into them. I'm always open for that. But for now, that's all. I hope to see you in the next one, and peace out.